Hi, folks. I'm Herb Stevenson. This is Natural Passages, revealing unmarked doors of life. Today, I'd like to talk about uh, what gets in the way of especially personal changes. Oftentimes, we have a lot of energy, desire to make a change. In fact, we get very excited and passionate, and it feels like an absolutely done deal. And for some reason along the line, it doesn't come to bear for us in our life. So some years ago, Vic Ordaz, a Shawnee elder, taught me the four laws of change that are, according to him, thousands of years old, and I have no reason to not believe him. But what I found out is that they're very true and can be very helpful when you're trying to make changes in your life. And so I'm going to talk about those four changes. And just briefly, I'm going to list the four of them, and then I'm going to describe them. The first change is the change has to come from within, and the second is change requires a vision. A third is requires a learning. A great learning is often said, and the fourth is it requires a community, often referred to as a healing forest in Native American terms. Um, so I just want you to think about that. The four of them, it comes from within you. It means you have to, something inside you has to change. You have to have a clear vision or a compelling picture of where you want to go. You have to have a great learning because the great learning is typically what's getting in the way. You have a desire for change, but there's something you don't want to see, and you have to have a learning about what that is to overcome that obstacle. And the fourth one is that you do need to have uh, a support function or group, and I'll elaborate on that as we go forward. So change comes from within is it's change is actually a relationship with yourself and the surrounding world. And so when we have changes, oftentimes we get hooked up or caught up in an energy that we're trying to run from something else versus actually looking at what is it that I'm running from. And it's often a felt sense, a feeling inside ourselves. It might be very difficult circumstances, which is more than warrant to change. But how many times have we heard about people that want to run from something and then end up not leaving, such as an abusive relationship? So something inside us has to change first. Uh, and I often like to refer to it as if it's a true change, think of it as like a pebble dropped into the water and the rippling waves go out. Our change has to start from inside us, and we have to radiate that change as we go outward in day to day life. And the second, which leads us to the second law is you have to have a compelling picture, uh, a vision of the change, but it's more than that. Because oftentimes when we do change, we're moving away from something, but we should have a clear picture as what will it look like, and not only what will it look like, what will it feel like inside ourselves. So it's almost like we're experiencing it in advance. And so the vision becomes a magnetic sense of energy drawing us towards it. And if we don't have that capacity to have a compelling vision or an awareness of what it will look like if I'm successful in making this change, we often miss. We don't succeed in what we're trying to do. And so if it can appear as a felt sense, I'll give you an example. When I bought the place that I live now, it's a 80-acre horse farm. Um, I had a felt sense of living at the property in that moment. And that became clear over the various things that I needed to do in order to make that happen. And so the felt sense is if it's not formalized and imprinted inside us, in other words, it becomes the guiding light of this driving us forward for this change, then often it falls back into the background. And the impact of it is we're frustrated or we just ignore their original desired change until next time a crisis or something comes up. So we have to hold a clear and compelling picture of what that change is in order to make it occur. In spiritual circles, they often refer to this as you have to actually experience, have a felt sense of as if the change has already happened. And if you do have that, the likelihood of creating that magnetic pull, that guiding light will occur. The third thing that happens to us when we're trying to make a change is we don't necessarily fully evaluate what is it that I'm trying to do. And so oftentimes if we suddenly something has changed inside us and it becomes a driving force, we have a compelling picture, a felt sense of moving forward. The next thing is in the process, and oftentimes is what happens is we've not thought about the obstacles. What is preventing us from making a change? Generally speaking, if we have an obstacle, the obstacle relates around something that we have not been able to see or face, and mostly it's about ourselves. So it's accompanied by a personal insight about yourself or the situation. And it can be the situation. So in some of my prior relationships, I was blinded, especially in my uh, prior marriage. I was blinded to the circumstances that I was facing. Um, and one day I had a moment of clarity and realized that I was living kind of like in a dream world. And even though I was very unhappy and I was moving through the process of knowing I needed to change and being fully committed, seeing a picture of what it would look like, I began to realize the reason that it had never happened was inside me. I had a series of beliefs of not leaving a marriage for you just work harder. That's very common in Midwestern families. And the impact of it is that I had to realize how I was preventing myself. And I had to then face, do I want to move forward? Do I want to actually make a change and leave this relationship that was not healthy for either one of us? So a great learning must occur, generally speaking, along the way. And if you're driving your change out of anguish, it can get you so far, but you'll have to come back and visit the learning of what is driving your anguish and how do you want to address that. The fourth law is basically you have to build or create a learning community. Another way of saying this is a support group must be created. One of the ways most people understand this in modern day society is pretty simple. In a divorce, I went through this with myself, but I've talked to many people about the same thing. It occurs if you get a divorce, you have some friends that stay with your spouse, and some people come with you. Some stay with both. They're able to separate the situation and hold the relationship. But in the process of a divorce, you're also, in my case, developing a new group. And that new group becomes a community, a new community of support that it supports me in that process of change. This can happen almost any place. So I'll give you an example of common ones. You change jobs or you move to a new house or a new community, you have to develop a new support group, a new community surrounding you and who you are. We often don't pay much attention to it, and so when people make moves of any sort or any type of major change, the frequent situation is that you feel a loss. Well, there is a loss. You don't have the energetic support of people around you the way you had before, and so building that becomes a critical piece for you of how do I build that. And part of it is, let's say, a new job. And the new job is that you begin to meet people. You're in the stress of learning the new job, getting used to the new routines. But in the process, you start developing relationships. And the sooner you start doing that, the better off you're going to be. With nothing more than just developing a little bit of chit chat around the water cooler or some other place, or seeing if people would be interested in having lunch with you so that you can have a conversation. Um, The same thing about moving to a new city. Frequently, you don't know anybody. Years ago, 50 years ago, when I was in the Marine Corps, it was my first experience of that, of going to a drastically different situation where I absolutely knew no one, and not knowing anyone. I realized that one of the things that slowly had to evolve is a natural curiosity that some people will have, and in boot camp, there's a natural connection to everybody's in a state of disarray and uh, internal fear as they were wondering what's going to happen next. But we developed bonds and relationships around that, and some of these people became lifelong friends for me. So it is a partnership between those initiating change and those participating in the change, and this can happen in businesses as well. There has to be a coalition, a critical mass of energy of people forming around whatever the change is. So, and in your case, if it's personal, is it a divorce or is it something else? Um, a lot of people experience the same issue going to college later in life. When I went back to school, I was older, and the impact of it was is at first feel like a duck out of water, but the real issue is I just needed to get to know a few people, and we often refer to the phrases like getting our land legs. So if you apply these four laws, it has to come from within, and which means a true commitment and clarity that you are going to make this change. You have to have a compelling picture. I prefer a felt sense of what it's going to look like or feel like if you accomplish it, when you accomplish it. Having a learning, looking at, don't just walk out the door and that's a change. You have to disentangle yourself from the past. What has prevented you from doing what you need to do? And then you're developing a new community to support you. And if you do that, what ends up happening is you're able to breaking these four laws down. You can see where you're making mistakes. So it wasn't successful because I really didn't evaluate deeper and get an insight or a learning that would help me understand why the necessity and or what it was that I'm moving away from. And only you can decide that. So I appreciate, hope you can apply these to yourself and whatever it is that you're wanting to do. Um, for me, it's become a principle or a structure that has supported me in my process of being able to make changes in my life that were meaningful, supportive, congruent with who I wanted to be. And as a result, I found these very helpful. They were good to me like 30 some years ago. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And I trust that this will be useful for you. And I'll look forward to you in the future. I'm thinking at this point of also going into some conversation on doubt. Um, Doubt undermines the majority of our change processes, and it will give us insights about the third law that you had to have a great learning. Because if you can look into doubt, which is the number one cause for failure to change, even though the change would be the best thing for you, I think it'll provide insights. So thanks, folks. Herb Stevenson. This is Natural Passages, revealing the unmarked doors of life, and I wish you a good day. Thank you.